my point was they're all mad, and I, said something I didn't, probably shouldn't have about a company.
Look, Tim Walz is a complete moron to me.
Oh boy, it turns out if you are the governor of a state, specifically Minnesota, you probably shouldn't make fun of the company your state is investing in, especially if people rely on those investments for retirement. So in this video, we will be going over the most recent CNN meltdown, talking about the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, trying to make fun of Tesla stock. So, before we start the video, please like the video. It's the #1 way you can help this channel, and it helps others see the videos as well. You're gonna enjoy this one.
Saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So, and if you own one, we're not blaming you. You can take dental floss and pull the Tesla thing.
Okay, so that's the original clip where Tim Walz is making fun of the Tesla stock. He does end up apologizing a few days later. We'll get to that soon. However, many people were scratching their heads and asking, why would you hate on the stock in which the people of Minnesota who elected you rely on that stock to do well for their investment funds and their retirement funds?
State Board of Investment, they have 1.6 million shares in Tesla in their retirement fund, 211,000 shares in a non-retirement fund. It's a relatively small amount, but that's one company, one single stock, and that's because Tesla is a huge part of the tech growth. But this is not the first time that companies have been in the crosshairs of protests. I mean, Republicans have protested companies all the time.
Okay, so now we will get to the Tim Walz apology after he has been called out by so many people, to include the citizens of Minnesota, and please leave your comments down below how you feel about all of this.
This guy bugs me in a way that is probably unhealthy, and but I have to be careful about being a smartass. I was making a joke. These people have no sense of humor. They are the most literal people. But my point was they're all mad, and I, said something I didn't, probably shouldn't have about a company. He is agreed. So I make the case. They're all butthurt about the Tesla thing, but they don't care the disrespect they have shown to employees at the Minneapolis VA who care for our veterans, and they fire them. They don't care. So we will have the conversation about efficiency in government and about doing that, but none of us believe for a second they're thinking about this.
Okay, so you can leave your opinions down below how you feel about that apology, if we can even call it an apology. I just find it very ironic and funny how Tim Walz is accusing Republicans of having no humor, when if you're a Republican or anybody who supports Tesla, you're seeing dealerships being burnt down, cars being keyed, you have entire lists of names of Tesla owners, so of course we don't find this as a joke, we find it as a legit threat.
And now Democrats are seizing the moment. Former Democratic nominee for Vice President, Governor Tim Walz, is already partway through his nationwide town hall slamming Trump, Musk, and Doge in some key battlegrounds.
And there's nothing conservative about an unelected South African Nepo baby firing people at the VA. They hate public education. I think they hate it for the reason we all know in here. It's easier to run an authoritarian government if you don't have a population that knows.
My mama always warned me about those South African Nepo babies.
Now, if there's one person who has always questioned Tim Walz, it's Scott Jennings from CNN. He is on record time and time again of, I don't want to say attacking, but just calling out, what is Tim Walz even doing? Does anybody even believe anything he has to say?
Especially young men in this country. And they're, in many ways, disconnected from the rest of their families, disconnected from their communities, disconnected from our political culture, disconnected from our civil culture. And that's a real problem for a society that depends on all of us to be engaged and working together to make it as good of a country and as good of a society as it can be. I think the Democrats in this election made men feel like that the patriarchy is over, boys, and we're going to put you in the back seat for a while, and you're just going to have to accept it. without any thought to the ramifications of telling people who are out honestly trying to make a living, provide for their families, be good husbands, be good fathers. When you tell people who are doing their level best that either A, it's not good enough, or B, you're part of the problem, what do you expect? And then finally, as a political tactic, you know, the attempt to put Walz on the ticket, and that was going to somehow solve all of the problems that had been built up for years, was ridiculous, because it turns out Walz was the last person that men wanted to hear from. And I remember at the beginning of that whole campaign, when they put him on, I sat right here, and people were like, oh, they got camouflaged hats. They're going to be wearing them in the deer stands this fall. And I think to your point that you just made, that was not, that idea that it was not formulated by a bunch of dudes who actually go deer hunting. It was come up with by a bunch of people who've never met a dude that actually goes deer hunting.
Now, I don't know if you guys remember, the context of what Scott Jennings is talking about is Tim Walz went on like this hunting trip, and there were a lot of photographers and videographers, and then that was released all over, you know, to the public. A lot of people are saying the reason why they did that was to show how masculine he was, to show that he's a hunter, you know, he's very blue collar, he was a veteran. Meanwhile, the clip did the exact opposite. In fact, a lot of men were like, you know what, Tim Walz is not as manly as he's portraying. Considering all of his gear was spotless, he wanted a Diet Mountain Dew. I'm not going to hate on him. That's healthy. Good for him. And then he was holding his firearm incorrectly. There were a lot of things where people were saying, you know what, this is a whole shtick and gimmick. Now, the reason why this is relevant today is because all of a sudden, are we still seeing the shtick and gimmick that, you know, Governor Tim Walz is trying to push on us today? I find it rather interesting, especially since he's the governor of Minnesota and he's going on these town hall, you know, events, or going to these town hall events, not even in his own state.
I have to be very honest, and I'm not surprised why the American people did not choose him. Nothing against the vice president. With that said, Elon Musk employs 80+ thousand Americans. Most of them are working class people. The implications of the stock, let's say this were to continue on for another year, so I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. Will the company at some point have to decrease its workplace? Most of those people, I would imagine, probably vote for Democrats, at least some of them. So now you're impacting people who likely share your worldview because you disagree with Elon Musk. Don't buy the car. Just like those guys are saying, let's protest Anheuser-Busch, et cetera. We're just not going to buy their beer. I'm okay with that. But destroying public property, there is no place for that. I agree with Kevin. Lock them up and set an example that this is not what we're going to tolerate in this country.
And somehow Democrats have tried to make it a comparable talking point, as if there were Bud Light factories being burned down. And if you were drinking a Bud Light, somebody would target you. You know, that's like what's happening with Tesla currently. So that's why right now Republicans are not buying the whole, this is a protest. I actually think a lot of these protests are legit. However, a lot of the individual protests that are not really that sanctioned or that organized, you have individual protesters going after individual Tesla dealerships, or they're going after individual Tesla charging stations and drivers. So as you can see, Republicans are just not finding this comparable at all. I don't know if Tim Walz realizes that when he goes after the stock of Tesla and the the reputation of Tesla, he's really grouping himself in, with trying to destroy an American company that could also have major implications to people's lives, not only on the stock level, but just a regular old Tesla driver. Now people don't even feel safe.
They want to make this about bureaucracy and cutting. This is about children. This is about broadband access in their schools. This is about the research you were talking about, pedagogy, things that we learn. And then it's about the Civil Rights Department at the Department of Education that makes sure that we don't have a situation where a Ruby Bridges is escorted to school with police. And so we're back in an area where we can segregate. And he knows that curriculums and those decisions are made on a local basis, but they muddy the water. So look, just like your previous guest, thanks for having her on, but it's chilling. They don't care about law. They don't care about where the American public's at. And that kind of segues to why I'm getting out there. And there's a reason that these Republican Congress members aren't holding town halls.
Now, that was Governor Walz very recently talking with Rachel Maddow at MSNBC about the Department of Education. However, like I always do, I did a little digging and research, and I actually found where Scott Jennings called out Tim Walz for not being the best educator himself.
consequential. Second of all, Walz is a buffoon. I'm sorry. This guy, he's the only school teacher in America who brags that none of his students can get into an Ivy League school. He's had one consequential press interaction with our Dana Bash, who asked him about the fabrications in his own resume, and his answer was essentially, me no understand words good. I mean, he's a buffoon. He's on a free ride for running under Harris. He gets.
You're a criminal. I'm talking about Tim Walz and his comments about the Tesla stock. He says it gives him a boost to see that stock going down.
That poor guy didn't check his portfolio and his own pension plan for state. It's beyond stupid what he did. He's talking down a 3.5% weighting in his own pension plan. I mean, what's the matter with that guy? He doesn't check the well-being of his own constituents in his state.
I mean,
that's their investment fund.
Point,
what a bozo.
Now, the irony behind all of this, and I know you're going to find this hilarious, but if you're from Minnesota, you're probably happy. The Tesla stock is going up slowly at $2.48 a share. Now, when you look at the 6-month drop-off, it started all the way up at $479 at the highest, which is $479 per stock. It dropped all the way down to $222, and then that's when Donald Trump did his whole, go buy a Tesla. And now it's going up slowly. It shot to 248, went back down to 225. Now we're back up to 248. Again, this is how the stock market works. This is not always representative of how a company is operating. This is actually an estimate or a projection. But anyway, the point is, ever since Tim Walz talked down on the Tesla stock, he actually did his state a massive favor because the stock is going back up. And I also want to debunk a really big myth while we're here. It is just a fallacy. It's not true to say that the Tesla stock and Tesla is falling apart. Yes, the stock is dropping, but overall, this is still considered a powerful stock and a powerful company to buy into. And by the way, I don't own any stocks. I'm not involved with Tesla. I'm not sponsored. Just a disclaimer. I don't get anything out of this. I just believe in the 80,000 Americans who work for the company, and I don't want them to lose their jobs.
How do you fight it?
This
I
notion
think
of
I could kick most of their ass. I do think that if they want to do it. I know I can outrun them, but I don't know if we're going to fall into that place where we want to. Okay, we challenge you to a WWE fight here type of thing.
Again, I am not taking this as literal. I do think Democrats take things way more literal than Republicans. I'm not trying to be biased, but that is Tim Walz claiming he can kick the butts of most Republicans or Donald Trump supporters on the Gavin Newsom podcast, which, by the way, now if you appear on that podcast, a lot of people question you. Again, it's almost as if in this video, I'm doing Tim Walz a big favor, like to either tone it down, do some more market research, because I don't know what the strategy is to threaten, Republicans with fisticuffs or trying to beat them up, try to dump the stock in which your state invests in. It's a rather interesting strategy. This might be historically one of the most interesting strategies we have ever seen as far as the possibility of a political candidate. I don't have any indicators on whether or not Tim Walz is going to run for a presidency or Senate or anything else. He is currently the governor, though, so I'll give him that. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys got some good laughs out of it, and I hope you guys got a little education out of it. But yeah, we'll see you guys later, and God bless.